I don't know who this is for, but just because he goes to church, this.
So this is teaching for women. So biblical marriage per scripture is laying with a man. They never did paper. That's not what marriage was in the Bible. No, that's worldly marriage, is getting a certificate. But biblical marriage is laying with a man. Whatever man you lay with, that is your husband. So fornication is two meanings in the Bible. One is sleeping around. Yes, we're not to fornicate, we're not to commit adultery, but it also is idolatry. Christmas and Easter, it's adultery on the Father. All the traditions that the church, the Christian church, does. They mix they drink from the cup of the devils and the cups of Jehovah with all their pagan idolatry. They do traditions and commandments of men like this. They lie to the people and say that marriage is, you have to get married either by the church or recognize that you are married by the states to be married, when that's not biblical marriage. They just went in the tent and consummated the marriage per scripture in the Bible. That is marriage to Jehovah. You don't need paper. And this is why a part of reasons why, because the church lies about this. You can look this up. 74% of abortions in America are from Christian women, and some of them are the mothers taking the daughters to go get abortions because it's shameful in the church to be knocked up out of wedlock in their eyes when two young people decide they want to be together, instead of teaching them that the marriage is consummation, having sex. They tell them they have to have paper. They got to be married by the church and married in the state eyes. In order to be married, they have to wait until they get that certificate in order to be married. And it's looked at shamefully. And also, his name's not Jesus, that's Baal. The son's name is Yeshua, or his English name is Joshua. You can find his English name. It was still preserved in Zechariah 3 and Revelations 5. Revelations 5 is quoting Zechariah 3, that talks about your lamb with the 7 eyes and the 7 spirits of Jehovah with filthy garments. High priest Joshua. That's our high priest. He had the same name as Joshua, son of Nun in the Old Testament, and he told you in John 5:42 and 43, I know you don't have the love of God in you. That's an idiom for, I know you don't keep the commandments of God, 1 John 5:3. I came in my Father's name, Yeshua, Yah, salvation. You didn't receive me, but you'll receive another that will come in his own name, because you don't have the love of God in you. If you go to church, you do commandments and traditions of men over the righteousness of God. We're to keep the 10 Commandments. We're to keep the Sabbath day, dawn Saturday to dawn Sunday. So you might want to Look at yourself and see if you're obeying God. And then he may bless you with a man of God. Women are to submit themselves unto their husbands as unto the Lord. Ephesians 5. And the man's supposed to make you spotless. And we are to be shamefaced without makeup. 1 Timothy 2, 9 through 15. Not usurping your authority over men. Not adorning ourselves. So you might want to go read your Messiah's commandments, his 2 magnified commandments. In Matthew 22, he quoted Deuteronomy chapter 6 and Leviticus 19. To love God means to keep the 10 commandments, and to love your neighbors, to do righteous judgment, judged by the 10 commandments only. And you're supposed to be keeping the covenants of promise in Ephesians 2. There's 2 of them. The Noah covenant to eat clean and keep the 10 commandments, the second covenant with promise that Paul tells you about in Ephesians 6, 1 through 4. To honor your father and your mother is Deuteronomy chapter 6. Yeshua's first and great commandment to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy might, is to raise your children up in the Lord. Keep the commandments in your heart, and if you do them, verse 25, it will be your righteousness. The righteousness of God in Psalms 119, verse 172, and all of his commandments are righteousness. Yeshua, the testimony, you may want to go learn. Yeshua tells you where to read the testimony of him for your eternal salvation in John 5, 37 through 47. If you don't believe what Moses wrote of them, you won't believe the Messiah or what he tells you. He tells you again in Luke 16 with the story of the rich man and Lazarus, and then also in Luke 24 when he tells the disciples that they're fools and slow of heart for not believing what Moses and all the prophets wrote of him. The testimony is in Deuteronomy 18, 15 through 19, that Yeshua would give what was desired at Horeb, Mount Horeb, in the day of the assembly. That's Deuteronomy 5, the 10 commandments. And then he would finish sacrificial law, the law added because of transgression that Moses wrote in a book, Deuteronomy 31:24 and Galatians 3:19. And then he would magnify the law and make it honorable again, because he was well pleased for his righteousness' sake, the 10 commandments, Isaiah 42:21, and he magnified to love God and love neighbor, giving them what was desired at Horeb, the 10 commandments. And then magnifying the royal law to love your neighbor, what James says in James 2, verse 8 and 9. But if you're respecters of persons, you don't rebuke sin, you commit sin, because sin is transgression of the law. And Yeshua tells you in Matthew 22, 36 through 40, that the law hangs on his 2 commandments. So breaking the 10 commandments and not rebuking sin and being respecters of persons, you commit sin. That is what sin is. John 14 tells you how he will abide with you, how you'll have the Son. You have to love him and keep his commandments. Hebrews chapter 5, verse 9, Yeshua becomes the author of eternal salvation for those who obey him. And Paul tells you, anyone that doesn't love the Son, let him be accursed in 1 Corinthians 16, verse 22. John 14:15, if you love me, keep my commandments. He tells you again in that chapter, if you don't keep my sayings, you don't love me. And the words that he spoke were not his, but the Father who sent him. That was the testimony in Deuteronomy 18. Jehovah would speak through his Son and give us commands Jehovah would require us to keep. Even Peter tells us this in Acts 3, verse 18 through 26, quoting Deuteronomy 18. Yeshua was sent to bless us, to turn us away from our iniquity. So you might want to get in covenants so Jehovah will bless you with a righteous, godly man.